And so, the Romans worked long and hard trying to figure out how on earth you actually build the latest style of warship.
I'm sorry, that is hilarious. How's it going, folks? Jack here with another reaction. So, you know how last year there was a meme that said, how often do you think about the Roman Empire? Well, it turns out that I caught myself doing that, and coincidentally enough, a subscriber went and said, how about you think about this some more? How about you react to some OverSimplified videos? This is a great idea. I haven't watched anything from OverSimplified in, I think, 2 years. And the last time was on the Second World War, so quite an interesting one. Unfortunately, that video had to be taken down because of some copyright things, and I wasn't too sure. I guess if I remember correctly, part of it was from the work of OverSimplified and some other stuff, but yeah, it was a bit complicated, so obviously I took down the video by request, so yeah, that was it. Seems to be okay, because apparently another video, as I typed for this one here, for the Punic War, there seems to be a bunch of reaction for a newer entry that they made on the Second Punic War, obviously. And yeah, there seem to be fine, I guess, with reactions to it, so I hope it's the same here. That being said, though, Punic War is not the area that I know the most about. Like, I know about the area of Carthage, the Carthaginians, through some theology studies that I did some years ago. So yeah, through that I guess that I have some understanding of what was going on there. Like, they were heretics in the view of other people. But that being said, though, let's just jump into OverSimplified's part 1 of the First Punic War. And of course, please do make sure to subscribe to the channel. They are absolutely awesome. And yeah, let's get into it.
Video was made possible by NordVPN. Click the link below and get an exclusive deal with a huge discount and a 30-day money-back guarantee. Introducing our new, glorious, breathtaking bucket plushie. Limited quantity available now, along with some Punic War character pins. Buy it.
There was an auction last year with many YouTubers who auctioned a bunch of things, and I was watching some of it, not the entire thing, but there was a section where Connor CDog VA auctioned OverSimplified his first original plushie. So that was kind of fun.
Or I'll marry your mother. It's your choice.
Oh, I guess she'll be happy to learn about history.
You sure have a lot of dignitas.
She's already married.
Okay. Hey, Dad. Hi, son. Just reading the newspaper. What can I do for you? Well, you know how you always say Rome is the greatest civilization in the world? It bloody well is. Well, I was just wondering, what makes us so great? How did we come to be? Wow. My son. Boy, let me take you on a journey to this side of the room.
Mustache bro
of Rome begins with these beautiful baby boys going
Romulus
to
and
mommy milkers. That's gross. You're gross. Sorry, son. You're not gross. I love you. They're called Romulus and Remus. And
yes.
When they grew up in 753 BC,
raised by wolves,
founded Rome. But there was just one problem. They couldn't agree on which of them should be the king.
They killed each other.
Worked it out peacefully, right? Oh, heavens no. Romulus caved Remus's skull in with a shovel. Here's a picture. Our first king committed fratricide? I know. Look at his face. When's the part where we become the greatest civilization, Dad? Well, you see, at first Rome was full of men. Oh, yeah. I'm talking like a real sausage party. You know what I mean? Yes, sir. So we invited some neighboring cities over for a big feast. And then we literally kidnapped all of their women. Here's a picture.
It's incredible how a lot of expansionist nations at the time quite did that. Not to say that it wasn't morally right, but it was quite the normal practice. Scary to be living at those times where you weren't like either a man or just like a part of an army.
Look at that one. She's like, this is messed up. You're messed up. Ugh. Sorry. I'll be a better father. I promise.
So no.
Finally, after centuries of monarchy, those tyrannical kings started getting a little too big for their britches. So we overthrew the kings and established Rome as a republic. Is that when all the killing stopped? Oh, heavens
Oh, hell no. That's where it
when
began.
the killing surged, baby. We went wild and conquered the Latin League, the Samnites, the Etruscans. Woo! What a rush. Dad, Rome seems pretty barbaric. You're barbaric!
They didn't get Sicily for quite some time, actually.
Oh, I forgot to tell you about the time a prophet told Saturn his son would one day overthrow him. So Saturn literally ate his own son.
Oh, yeah, the
seconds
painting.
after he was born. I don't want to see a picture. Here's a picture. Dad, look at that. That's messed up, man. Are we really this uncivilized? Hey! If we were so uncivilized, would we use communal toilets where we all fart and poo together in one big stinky, steamy, dirty toilet room? Yeah, Dad.
We do.
We would. Clean your butt with a sponge, Timulus. But all these guys just used it. What's wrong with your son, bro? I don't want to be Roman. This is so weird. You're weird.
I mean, they would put it in, drench it in vinegar when doing it for disinfection purposes. It wasn't quite the best thing. I think there was a couple of years ago, like an anime that came out, a Netflix anime, I think, yeah, where like, if you know, there is this thing called isekai, like directly translate to another world, but that's like when somebody gets transported from the real world to somewhere else. And funny enough, there was one on the ancient Rome that actually saw, I think, an architect being transported now this time around, now from not to a different world, but to Japan, where he then reflected on the differences between the two cultures. Obviously made by a Japanese author, but like learning about some of the things that I perhaps didn't know was quite interesting through that medium. But that being said, though, regarding the toilets, they did in fact have public toilet as well as public baths. So yeah, this thing here is very true. And I mean, when it comes to sanitation, they did what they could. I mean, these were people that literally washed their clothes in pee. And no, before somebody attacks me for saying that, no, they didn't actually do it with pee, I'm going with it for the meme's sake. I know that the thing that they focused on was the ammonia content from urine, which of course they could use as a caustic matter to wash clothes. So I know that, okay? Let's follow the memes here.
Oh, sorry, you're not weird. I'm sure you're probably fine.
Ugh. What an intro.
The Roman Republic, a nation that, since its foundation,
before the empire,
stabbing necks all the way down the Italian peninsula. But this isn't the famous Roman Empire that ruled the known world. Not yet anyway. This is a relatively juvenile Rome, still just a regional power. In 264 BC, the big daddy of the Western Mediterranean was Carthage. Let's rewind a bit. Carthage was founded in 814 BC when some Phoenicians in Tyre had a mega surplus of goods and decided to export those goods across the Mediterranean. They became the dominant trading power in the region, and to support their growing trade network, the Phoenicians established a number of colonies, one of which was Carthage.
So remember how I said that I get much of my knowledge about the ancient world through theology studies? Well, the mention there of Tyre is interesting because in Ezekiel 28, there is the mention of the king of Tyre. And with regards to, I guess, like an analogy to the devil being in paradise, that he was given the opportunity of being there by road to the Most High and stuff like that. But it was as a direct mention. The reason as to why that gets brought forth is literally because the people that ended up being the heathens who did not believe in Yahweh, the Abrahamic God, were those who believe in the God that the king of Tyre followed, then in Carthage, which was Baal at the time. So that makes a lot of sense why they would employ such language.
Therefore, Carthage began its life as a Phoenician trade colony, and the Carthaginians were actually Phoenicians. Or, if you're a Latin-speaking Roman,
Punic.
They were Punic, hence the name of the video.
Right.
Over the centuries, Carthage gradually expanded and became the region's base of power. Just like Rome, Carthage was a semi-democratic republic with its own senate and judiciary. But there were also some pretty hefty differences between the two. While Rome was big into farming and stabbing people in the neck, The Carthaginians, on the other
Trade.
hand, just like their Phoenician forefathers, had built their power through trade and navigating the waves. They went here and there, selling ivory tusks, gold, and slaves. And as a result, they were rolling
Filthy
it.
rich.
Whenever they weren't busy swimming around in their copious hoards of money, in their spare time, they also possibly enjoyed sacrificing their children to Baal, the god
Yeah.
of... Let me just check my notes.
Crops, I think so.
Yes. Plant fertility. Oh boy, these
Yeah.
figs aren't looking too hot. Maybe if I throw my son into a burning pit of fire, they'll grow. Have you tried watering them, Dad? No, we'll try that second.
I find it quite interesting that so many cultures actually engage in this practice, very barbaric at the time, even similar to the Carthaginian here, because you had stuff like the Aztec who engaged in something of the same sort for the sake of rain. You had the Mayans who would do the same thing for young newborns because they were closer to the spirit world. At least that's what they thought, that they had a closer connection to them. And of course we have our very well-known Abrahamic God, which of course that's the story of the binding of Isaac that most people will know about with the connection of Easter, right? That is supposed to be the end of that practice for child sacrifices, but that very much continued even in the Bible, with many passages citing how some did it for the sake of like valor, some did it to get victory through God. For example, in the book of Judges, it actually is one of the acts that is very disputed with the daughter of Jephthah. And some translation says that she was actually burned at the stake for the church, and others says that because the victory was granted to Jephthah himself, that she was then bound to became a sacrifice to the church, in that she was bound to serve the church for all her life. Well, whether her autonomy was taken away or she was just outright killed, there is a difference obviously, but yeah, the customs was pretty crazy.
Result of all their trading, Carthage had emerged as one of the Mediterranean's superpowers. But wait, they said, Rome? What the heck is that? Well, I know
What
it's
is
a
even
pretty
that?
obscure little country that you've probably never heard of. But this spunky young nation was about to upset the entire region's balance of power. Initially, the two sides enjoyed relatively friendly relations, and had even signed a couple treaties. But it was a relationship that was practically destined to turn sour. See, Rome had a thing where they liked to aggressively expand their boundaries, often viewing such expansion as a defensive act. Kinda like when you kill your neighbor, because you knew eventually they would have tried to kill you first.
Freaking castle doctrine. Yeah, it's a meme. We love it though.
Meanwhile, Carthage was extremely protective of its wealthy trade network. So if you put a very strategically important island between them, well, 2 + 2 = war. Tensions rose, and the two sides began viewing each other with increasing disdain. The hard-working Romans looked across the water at the money-hungry Carthaginians and said, "Look at those dishonest crooks. Bet they've never done an honest day's work in their lives." And the Carthaginians looked back and said, "Look at those simple-minded brutes. Bet they've never sacrificed a baby in their lives." Yeah! While war between the two superpowers seemed inevitable, the event that finally triggered it was a little unexpected. The whole thing began with a few simple mad lads on a wild night out. These mad lads are called the Mamertines. They were Italian mercenaries employed by the tyrant of Syracuse here. But when he died, his successor said, "Sorry fellas, we don't need any big burly men with sharp sticks anymore. You can all go home."
Oh, that's kind of like World War II. I played Company of Heroes 3 last year, and there was a whole part with the Italian campaign that gave me a lot of knowledge on that part. But yeah, the invasion of Sicily was kind of a thing there, and there were mercenary groups that also were hired to help defend the area, but also ended up joining the Allies in the support against the fascist army of Mussolini.
The Mamertines, as it turned out, didn't want to go home. So instead, they went to the nearby town of Messana and said, "Hey man, we are but poor little buff boys without a home. May we come in?" Aw, poor fellas. Sure thing. Just so long as you promise not to massacre all of us.
Psych.
We promise. The Mamertines then massacred all of them. Well, not all of them, just the men. And they stole their homes and families. Ha! This is my house now. This is my best dad ever
Well
mug
done.
now. And you guys are my new family. Son, wanna go play catch with your old papa? You're not my real dad! Ugh, teenagers.
Plays Among Us.
Am I right, dear? You're not my real husband. Ugh, I'm so trapped in this marriage.
Leave.
Then get out! No. Messana was now controlled by the Mamertines, and they began raiding up and down the Syracuse coastline. When the new ruler of Syracuse saw this, he wasn't happy. The Syracusans began fighting back, and in response, the Mamertines said, "Oh crap, they're fighting back? What do we do? Quick, we'll convince the Carthaginians to come and save us." Oh no! We're in trouble, and we need a big, strong empire to come and rub our bellies. Why are you saying it like that? If I was a big, strong empire, I think I'd like to be seduced. It's working! The Carthaginians had long dreamed of controlling all of Sicily. They had been fighting Syracuse and their Greek influence on the island for centuries. And now, here was a great opportunity to get one over on them. So Carthage promptly answered the Mamertines' cry for help and sent a force to garrison Messana. As it turned out, however, some within the ranks of the Mamertines weren't too happy with the occupying Carthaginians, and they sent out a second cry for help to Rome. When it reached the Roman Senate, they were a little more hesitant. Going to help the Mamertines ran the risk of triggering an all-out war with Carthage,
Of course.
and they had only just finished conquering the Italian peninsula, so they were kind of tired. Plus, the Mamertines were all the way across the water. They had never made a leap like that before. So you would assume that to avoid any conflict with Carthage, the exhausted Romans would probably sit this one out. But
That's
you
true.
would assume
The Romans weren't that good at naval battle at the time. Again, since I don't have that much of knowledge there, this is actually something that I acquired from playing a video game. Yes, I know. A lot of video game references being made here. AC Origins give you a very nice overview of the situation. Now, of course, this is when we're literally talking about the Roman Empire. That's like 44 BC, which is like 150 years after this. So yeah, a lot further than this, but it does give you an overview of how it was that they acquired a lot of the skills through sometimes reverse engineering some stuff.
wrong. Rome just couldn't resist a good chance for war. Why? Well, there's something you gotta understand about Rome. See, as a republic, they were hell-bent on preventing any one man from ever gaining too much power. And so rather than having one leader, Rome had two, called consuls, who shared power. These consuls could also only serve for 1 year at a time before new consuls were elected.
Oh,
These
I
measures to
did
limit the
not know
powers
that.
of the consuls were noble, but had an interesting side effect. The consuls knew they had just 1 year to try and gain as much glory and prestige as possible.
That's cool.
Something that was very important in Roman society. And the
Dignista.
best way of gaining glory and prestige? Military victory, of course. The Roman political system basically ended up encouraging these
Consuls
consuls
of, yeah.
to go out and be as aggressive.
Crack as many cold as possible. But that's actually pretty smart. Like, of course, most regions nowadays have like the 4-year term, and when you have two, I think in the same manner that Julius Caesar and Mark Antony were, you kind of promote people to do better, especially if you're rewarding the victories, rewarding them for being victorious afterwards.
As your Italian grandmother when you don't eat all the spaghetti. And so the glory-seeking consuls convinced the people to vote in favor of going to Messana. And in they went.
Nice.
Upon the arrival of the Romans, the Carthaginians in the city, amongst the confusion, were forced to leave. Now, in contrast to Roman aggression, the Carthaginian military had a slightly different philosophy. All right, kids, listen up. If you want to grow up to be Carthaginian military leaders, there's a few things you have to understand. If you fail to succeed on the battlefield, that's a crucifixion. Showing cowardice, that's a crucifixion. Hello, sir. What are you doing
Oh,
here?
no.
Aren't you meant to be in Messana? Yeah, but the Romans showed up. So you just left? Sure did.
That's a
Oh, you better
crucifixion.
believe that's a crucifixion. The Roman consuls were awarded for victory, and therefore tended to be aggressive go-getters. By contrast, the Carthaginian generals were brutally punished for failure, and
Okay.
so they tended to be more cautious.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Why they were also aggressive, which matched perfectly with their philosophies. If they're like those ultra expansionist in their view of the world, which I know a lot of superpowers did that already, wanted just to conquer territory, but even more aggressive than most, being rewarded for doing good was the perfect strategy. Whereas they, through trade only, not only, but for the most part through trade, with then a military that was frowning upon every single mistake, oversimplifying things here, would have resulted in a lot more caution and perhaps also
And restrained. This dynamic is helpful for understanding some of the crazy things that happened during the Punic Wars. So, the Romans have crossed over to Messana, and now there was some red on the island. Hit that panic button. This turn of events was unacceptable to both Carthage and Syracuse, so the traditional enemies teamed up to kick the Romans off their island. They surrounded the city and said, "Hey, you jerks! This isn't your island! Come out of there at once!" Okay.
what did you say, Bogo?
See, Phil, you just gotta speak with authority. That's what being an alpha male's all about. Hey, man. You brought your weapons and armor? No, I didn't mean...
The derpy horse.
Oh, crap. Out the Roman legions came to engage the Carthaginians in battle, and they sent them packing.
Wow.
With the Battle of Messana, whether intended or not, by going to help the Mamertines, the two sides had just slipped into an all-out war. With the initial Roman victory, towns across Sicily, including Syracuse, began switching allegiance, because being a winner is more fun. But the Carthaginians weren't about to just give up that easily. In 262 BC, they began building up their forces at Agrigentum. So the Romans, being aggressive go-getters, aggressively go-got them. The Romans immediately laid siege, hoping to starve out the Carthaginian garrison. However, because this was the first time Rome had been fighting outside the Italian peninsula, across the water, they struggled to supply their forces, and before long, the Romans were as starving as the Carthaginians they were besieging.
That's actually one of the worst ways of casualties that I've come to realize recently. I did watch a video on the fallen of World War II, which brought back a memory about what was going on the Soviet front. I guess Eastern Front. Yeah, that's the better word to use here. But yeah, a lot of starvation was happening on both the Nazi side, of course, during the assault, the winter assault. But then, of course, on the Soviet side with the fall of Leningrad, for example, like millions of people dying because of only that, the lack of food. And yeah, while I know that the world population was not that big at the time here, we're talking what? 200 or so million people. Okay, I need to look this up before I just say some random numbers. This is the United States Census Bureau, and I don't know exactly how accurate this is. We can check and cross-reference with different sites and different sources. But what they seem to say here is that we are within the ballpark of 150 to 231 million people, if we take the highest estimate there. Still a lot of people. Now, I don't quite know how many casualties we're going to get into here, but I still imagine that it's a lot.
They had to forage for food, leaving them open to ambush. And when Carthaginian reinforcements arrived, creating a double siege, things got really bad. Everybody starved each other for months until nobody could take it anymore, and they all finally came out for battle, which Rome won. Here's the report from the recent siege at Agrigentum, sir.
We killed 30,000 while only suffering 7,000 losses? That's amazing! We're the best!
Yes, sir. Whoops, those are the wrong way around.
What? We lost 30,000? We're the worst!
But we won, right?
Yes, sir.
No.
But we also got our asses kicked.
Yes, sir.
So are we the best or the worst?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
The
Confusion.
Romans wanted Agrigentum because they were aggressive go-getters, and they now began eyeing up the possibility of conquering the entire island. But they also suffered very heavy losses, and it was clear they couldn't sustain a campaign if they couldn't supply their troops. Here's the issue.
Across the
Sicily
sea.
Was an island. Islands are surrounded by water. A strong navy would be vital for supplying troops and winning the war. Here was Carthage's navy, and here was Rome's. I think you can see the problem.
Why was he such a thick boy? Yeah, it's an interesting look at this. It made me think of France and Britain during the Napoleonic Wars. Like, you know, Carthage being Britain with the massive fleet, and Rome being France with the massive land army.
Historians debate just how much naval experience Rome had at this point. Presumably, they must have had something to defend their shoreline.
Sure.
But whatever it was, it would have paled in comparison to the Carthaginian juggernaut. And so Rome had to figure out exactly what to do about all this water.
Come on, men. We're not gonna let some pansy candy-ass water get in the way of our glorious victory against Carthage. Charge!
You aren't Christian yet. You can't just walk on water. It's only like in 300 AD that the Romans get the, what's it called? Tractate? No, god damn it. I need to think in like Warhammer 40k terms here. The Edict of Milan. Then, yeah, then they became that.
Tell my kids I love them.
We're gonna need a bigger boat. What's a boat? I don't know. If the Romans wanted to win this war and obtain Sicily, there was only one thing for them to do. I guess we're just gonna have to go ahead and build ourselves a war fleet, aren't we? From scratch? From scratch. Well, we don't even know how. Never mind how to fight with one. Don't worry, Hank. We're up to the challenge. Come on, guys. We're Romans, and Romans aren't afraid of anything. And so, the Romans worked long and hard trying to figure out how on earth you actually build the latest style of warship.
I'm sorry, that is hilarious. The chariot with the fish in front there. Oh my god. The scuba diving horses.
In the end, they had a bit of luck on their side. A Carthaginian quinquereme ended up accidentally grounding on Italian soil. The Romans found it and copied the design. While the new fleet was being
Reverse
built,
engineering.
the Romans trained rowers on land. And would you believe it? The Romans put together a full fighting fleet of 120 warships
Damn.
in just 2 months.
That's incredible. Yeah, they were hard workers. Like, when the Romans saw an invention, they were like, we can do it better. We can.
Staggering feat. Now, I know what you're thinking, but oversimplified. If the Romans can build a war fleet from scratch in 2 months, then why does it take you half a year to make a video? Well, my valued subscriber, I think you should shut up. What the heck? How on earth did the Romans learn how to build a war fleet? This shouldn't be happening. From what I hear, they copied the design from us, sir. Well, how on earth did they get the blueprint, Carl? I don't know, sir. But I'll tell you what. If you're worried about people stealing your data, no, and you want to protect yourself from outside threats, don't you dare.
NordVPN.
Then you, my friend, if you mention NordVPN, I'll scream. Should use NordVPN. Do you?
Second only to the internet historian to do this. The level of build up in these ads are great.
You like corporations knowing everything about you and then selling your data to advertisers who convince you to buy things you don't need in an endless cycle over and over until you die?
To my understanding, Squatty Potty actually are useful. I've used it twice when I was traveling abroad. Because that is how your rectum is supposed to be positioned when you're doing the thing, okay? I'm not saying that you should buy one, I'm just saying that it makes sense.
The siege at Agrigentum, supply issues, and building a war fleet.
So now the Romans have a navy, and it's time to put it to the test. But how does one wage ancient naval warfare?
Good question.
Easy. All of the ships had giant bronze rams on the front, so all you had to do was outmaneuver the enemy and give him the jimmies. Easy as pie. And so the aggressive Romans set out for some good old-fashioned jimmy giving. The consul, Gnaeus Cornelius Scipio, set out for the town of Lipara, believing the garrison there wanted to join the Romans. As he entered the harbor, however, he found himself trapped by a Carthaginian fleet, and in the following skirmish, he was completely outmatched. The Romans may have had a brand new fleet, but when it came to engaging in actual combat, their inexperience showed. There was just something better about the Carthaginian ships. The Carthaginian rowers had nicer abs. The entire Carthaginian Empire had been built on expert seamanship. So, when it came to water, the Carthaginians were better, and the Romans were wetter. In their initial skirmish, the Romans were beaten so badly that the consul, Scipio, was given a nickname, Asina. And if you're wondering what that means, just drop the Ina. So what were the Romans to do? How could they possibly stand up to this Carthaginian superpower?
Etymologically speaking, this is where the word asinine comes from. That's it's easy to catch.
Well, there's something you gotta understand about the Romans. Back when they found that Carthaginian ship and copied its design, that wasn't a one-off thing. Copying their enemies was as Roman as punishing murderers by sewing them into a leather pouch with a monkey, snake, and rooster, and then throwing them into a river, which is a thing they did. Wait, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, copying their enemies. Many of the most famous Roman inventions were actually borrowed. Aqueducts, chariot racing, their gods. Even in warfare, the Romans would get pierced by a Sabine javelin, and they'd be like, wow. They'd get hacked to bits by an Iberian sword, and they'd be like, wow. And they'd copy the designs for themselves.
Speaking of the aqueduct thing there, while the Romans did amazing thing to the point of even their cement being better than what we have today because of the use of quicklime, they had some issues though, right? The copy weren't perfect. For example, yes, the aqueducts were amazing, transported water from long distances, clear and pure water. But the use of lead, as an example, in a lot of the things, actually also their cooking pans, ended up giving them a lot of lead poisoning, which led to a bunch of problems, to sickness, nausea, headaches. Actually, it caused some neurological diseases in them because lead poisoning can lead to like reduction of parts of the frontal cortex. So yeah, if you heard about certain things, stories about Romans being a little bit cuckoo, that might have been the cause. But an interesting thing, because I just got like a flashback of the intro of the video. They used to call the lead poisoning Satyrism, which in relation to the painting of Saturn there eating his son by the head first. So yeah.
However, they wouldn't just copy it. They would advance it, finding ways to adapt it as perfectly as possible. And in the case of naval warfare, the Romans realized if they wanted to beat the Carthaginians at their own game, they would have to adapt. The Romans excelled at combat on land, not on water. But what if, they said, we could somehow turn a sea battle into a land battle? Sounds crazy, right? Well, they made a couple of tweaks to their warship, and look, here they come again. They must love getting their asses kicked. Sir, what's that toll thing sticking out of their ships? They really are idiots. Look at that thing. That'll make them blow over.
Take it seriously. Dodge.
Bob.
Dodge.
Bob, get your camera out. Take a picture of it. I mean, how stupid can you be? Let's just add a big wooden tower to our ship that'll weigh us down and blow us over in the wind. I mean, what does that thing even do? The Romans had built a big swinging spiked gangway called the Corvus. So when the Carthaginian ships approached to ram them, The Romans would just slam them.
That makes sense.
The Carthaginians tried going around. No problem. The Corvus could swivel. Try going behind. The Romans would huddle to the coastline.
Smart.
It was foolproof. Those big, sexy Carthaginian rowing muscles could flex all they want, but they were no match for the Roman mind. So ladies, you see, what really matters is what's on the inside.
Or try getting both. Self-congratulatory here a bit. Sorry.
Please go out with me. And with that, the Romans, who had only just recently began dabbling in the art of naval combat, thanks to their ingenious Corvus, had just managed to outclass the Mediterranean seafaring superpower.
That's
the
cool.
Carthaginians were stunned. And the general in charge of the defeated Carthaginian fleet, well, you better believe that's a crucifixion. With their newfound control of the seas, the Romans could now more easily blockade coastal cities and supply their legions on land. Surely, the Romans were now free to unleash their aggression all over the island. Haha! Hey Carthaginians, what are you gonna do now that we're free to rampage across the island? We're gonna go inside these walls and close this gate.
Attrition again.
Oh, come on, guys. Stop messing around. Come out so we can kill you. No. Oh, come on. No. Oh, no. To counter the new Roman supremacy, the Carthaginians decided to engage in a defensive war of attrition, forcing the Romans to engage in siege. After lengthy siege, the war in Sicily became a long, hard, back-and-forth slug. One by one, cities slowly fell as the Romans gained ground. Occasionally, the Carthaginians countered and even pushed them back, only for the Romans to rebound again. And whenever a city did finally fall, the Romans could delight in slaughtering the entire population and selling any survivors into slavery, which was pretty standard procedure at the time.
Yeah.
In general, the campaign on land was progressing much slower than the Romans had hoped, and quite frankly, they were getting sick of it. So in 256 BC, they decided that something had to change. Hey everyone, my name's Marcus Attilius Regulus, and I'll be one of your consuls for this year. Look, as I'm sure you all know, Sicily's being a bit of a drag. Sure, I could go and spend my entire year as consul besieging one single city, but they'll never make a naked statue of me for that. So here's the new plan. I'm gonna skip Sicily entirely, take my army, and go right for the heart of Carthage itself.
Boy.
I'll slaughter the men, enslave all the women and children, and when I return, you'll all build 1,000 naked statues of me. Marcus, that women and children stuff, that seems pretty evil and barbaric.
That's normal.
No, Jim, it's perfectly normal in the ancient world. Sometimes we even chop their pets in half. Okay, guys, looks like the Romans are coming straight for us this time. And what will they do when they get here? They'll kill us all. They'll massacre each and every last one of us. They may even chop our pets in half. That's barbaric! No, Rob, it's actually pretty normal for the time. We'd do the same to them. Who'll protect us? Funny you should ask, Mary. That's kind of why I called this meeting.
Oh no.
Who will protect us? Protect our families, our homes, our children.
If you say child sacrifices, I'm gonna lose it.
You guys? Ha! Don't make me laugh. Why, you're just a bunch of stupid and weak farmers. Simple-minded buffoons. Cowards. Fools.
Wow.
Rob here thinks enslaving women and children is barbaric. You're a snowflake, Rob. Yes, you are. The fact is, if the Romans manage to land on African soil, we're all gonna die. A terrifying, hideous, unspeakably painful death.
Well, thanks for the pep talk. That's it. That's it.
Is that the end of that speech? Yes. The Carthaginians had to stop the Romans from ever landing in Africa because they believed that would be the end. So as the Romans were building an invasion fleet, the size of which the world had never seen before, the Carthaginians were preparing an even bigger one to stop them. And in 256 BC, as the Roman invasion fleet made its way south, The stage was set for a humongous battle that saw 680 warships, around 300,000 men, fighting to decide the course of the war. To this day, the Battle of Cape Ignomus remains possibly the largest naval battle in human history, all the way back in ancient times.
Wow. Now, I don't know exactly how those numbers have gathered in the same way with the world population that we got there, but obviously these are rather good estimates, and also who ends up writing the stories, right? We will say that some of the Romans here might have had some a little bit of inflated numbers. Who knows? Hopefully it's very correct. But man, what a battle.
So the next time your granddad tells you about the time he sank a Japanese aircraft carrier, kick him in the nuts. The Romans had a lot riding on this battle. They weren't just sending their warships, but transports as well, full of supplies and horses for their invasion of Africa. They therefore formed a protective wedge-like formation to punch through the long, thin Carthaginian line. The Carthaginian generals, however, desperate to prevent the Romans from reaching Africa, had a plan of their own. As the Roman fleet approached, the Carthaginian center feigned a retreat, luring the Romans in so their outstretched flanks could envelop them and get around the Roman corvus. A clever plan. But with such a huge battle and so many ships crowded together, the Carthaginians struggled to maneuver as hoped.
Oh
and
no!
in the chaos, 3 separate battles emerged across the huge battle space. With the number of ships limiting their ability to maneuver, the Carthaginians became sitting ducks.
Yeah.
And all the Romans had to do was start
corvus.
swinging. The Roman center came out on top and were then able to turn around and rescue their pinned down flanks. The Battle of Cape Ignomus was a Roman victory.
Damn, what a slaughter. That's crazy. Okay, I am super pumped for part 2, and I will try to get it out as quickly as I will upload this one. Damn, this is exciting stuff. But guys, thank you so much for checking out this video. As always, please do make sure to go and subscribe to OverSimplified. And of course, if you like this video, don't forget to give the video a like. That being said though, wish you also have a wonderful day. See you guys in the next one. Bye.